pleasant day to all of you watching Agenda, and thank you for joining us once again this morning. It's a Thursday. It's the 18th of August, 2022. Welcome back, and we do hope you are all feeling fine. You are all looking forward to the day, and that you've had a heavy or at least a nice breakfast to start up the day correctly. Okay, today let's do our daily starter first. And our daily starter comes from the book of Matthew, chapter 11, verse 29. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your soul. Okay, now I know that many of you are very familiar with this, but there is a different perspective that some pastors, mentors have put to this passage in the Bible. And their interpretation is that if you come to the Lord, if you go to God and take His yoke, okay, it meaning if you follow the will of God, your burdens will be lighter, because men, even women, tend to overburden themselves. Kumbaga, sobra tayong nag-aambisyon, binibigyan natin ng sarili natin ng sobrang daming obligasyon, and we eventually burn out or nauupos. Okay, so take my yoke upon you, because God's will for you is lighter, better, and more peaceful. Okay, now let's go to the front page of the Philippine Star. And the front page headline is Marcos eyes COVID state of emergency until year end. President Bongbong Marcos is considering, or probably has already decided, to extend the COVID state of emergency until the year end because of the continuing rising number of cases, plus the fact that under a state of emergency, we are extended, according to the president, more assistance by international bodies and organizations like the World Health Organization. Let's now go to the top of the front page. BBM revamps SRA. NEDA backs sugar imports if, okay, if raw, may if sila eh. And medyo pasensya na po, mabagal ang ating if NEDA, I'm just checking this because I want to be sure of the position of NEDA here. But anyway, may if ang NEDA, and I'm sorry, but I can't seem to get my código back there. But anyway, let's continue. DOT COVID measures in place for travel to the Philippines. The Department of Tourism has announced that those traveling to the Philippines will be sufficiently assisted, protected for medical requirements. So this is a reaction to the US CDC announcement that the travel to the Philippines is high risk. The photo at the top of the front page is a photo of President Bongbong Marcos with his son, Congressman Sandro Marcos, receiving their second COVID-19 booster during the Pinalakas vaccine campaign in Manila. Okay, let's be clear about this, ladies and gentlemen. Please get your second booster shot. My wife and I already have had our second booster last week. Medyo para kang tinatrangkaso, masakit katawan, but at the end of the day, after 2 weeks, we hope to be well covered, because that's according to the to our doctor friends at the Rizal Medical Center. It takes 2 weeks for the vaccine, second booster, to complete, to be fully effective in our bodies. Okay. Oh, by the way, good morning to our friends at the Rizal Medical Center here in Pasig. I am a champion of public hospitals. Maganda na, affordable pa. Okay, Quezon City schools surprise closure probe. Okay, medyo nabigla ang marami, and administrators of the Colegio de San Lorenzo in Quezon City may still face legal issues, okay, if it turns out that their closure was premature in nature. Okay, Congress sets NCAP probe. The House of Representatives is set to open its investigation, legislative inquiry into the no contact apprehension policy and PPP agreements of Quezon City, Parañaque, Manila, and if I'm not mistaken, Pasay. And Congressman Ace Barbers is pushing for that, and it will be undertaken by the committee headed by Congressman Acop. Okay. The photo in the center in the center part of the Philippine Star is a photo of a retailer of soft drinks. And the lady retailer is saying that certain deliveries has been fluctuating. May shortage now ng favorite beverage nating lahat. Well, in a way, it's a blessing in disguise because many of us might just be able to cut our addiction to soft drinks. Okay, meanwhile, DOH Omicron-specific vaccine in the Philippines by next year. Mamimili na ang DOH if and when, okay, these vaccines become readily available to governments, because it's still nasa pugun pa. They're still working on it. They're still some are formulating, some are getting permits, etc. POPCOM pushes raising retirement age. So Population Commission has joined the NEDA in their support for pushing the retirement age to the higher level and jobs for elderly. Last but not the least, at the bottom part of the Philippine Star, you have a photo of the Villar family headed by Senator Cynthia Villar, Senator Mark Villar, Congresswoman Camille, and Deputy Speaker Camille Villar leading the opening inauguration of a 676-meter Zapote River Drive along Pasong Baka in their area. Yung pong river drive na yan is a parang alternate route to east traffic. Maybe the MMDA should look into that. Okay, so look into that because there's so much road space available along the rivers that would help ease traffic in many places and provide shortcuts. Kanya lang, hindi magalaw yung mga untouchable corporations, companies that are using those areas as loading bays, warehouse facility, etc., etc. Okay, let's now go to our interview portion. But first of all, let's go for a quick break. And when we return, we resume interviews here on Agenda. Okay, welcome back to the program. And before anything, thank you to all of you who are subscribers of Cignal TV and viewers of One News PH here on Channels 8 and also Channel 250. And those of you who watch us via YouTube and of course Facebook. Maraming salamat po and good morning to all our friends in Cebu, in Bacolod, lalo na yung mga community ng mga Green Legs, mga Sabungero, and our friends in Zamboanga, also my, especially the Pama group, yung FC Pama. Okay, let's talk about education because as you recall, when I read the front page news, Quezon City Schools surprise closure probed. Okay, yun po yung nilagay ng front page ng Philippine Star sa front page. So let's discuss this with our first guest today, and here's his intro video.
Attorney Joseph Noel Estrada is the Managing Director of the Coordinating Council of Private Educational Associations of the Philippines, or COCOPEA. Attorney Estrada is also a counsel to several educational associations which include the likes of PAASCU, NCAA, and NAPSPhil. Aside from this, he is also managing partner at the Estrada and Aquino law firm.
Good morning, Attorney Estrada. Welcome back to the program.
Good morning, Cito, and good morning to all your televiewers, and thanks for having me back.
Okay, it's a very timely return to the program because ang pag-uusapan or the big issue right now, it may say, initially people were, dismissing it or saying, oh, it's just another school that closed. But apparently, 1,400 students were affected. 100 employees now stand to lose their jobs. And the authorities were caught unaware that a college was going to close, and it happened on the first day of school. Now, the issue here is, how did this happen without people knowing and the authorities being advised in advance? And could this have a ripple effect? Because ang sabi nung Colegio de San Lorenzo ba yan, they said that it was all because of low enrollment numbers. Is it because of COVID, or is it because the college was had low standards that people just decided they didn't want to go there? Attorney.
Well, Cito, first of all, the economic impact of the pandemic was really huge on the education and the private education sector. So if you remember, during the first year of the pandemic, around 700 schools in basic education closed down, as reported by DepEd. And the second year, there were about 400 schools that received zero enrollment. This is mainly because of the inability of the parents to continue to send their children to the private schools because of the cost. Because many lost their jobs, many had reduced income. So I think this is a general situation for many of the private schools. So I would not discount that possibility that it's really mainly on financial losses due to low enrollment. So that's why we've been asking for government support for the private schools. Since the pandemic began, to avert these situations.
Okay, now having said that, you're asking government for support, financial support, but the question is, and I'm not being combative or anything. This is kilala mo naman ako. I have all these questions reflecting the interest of our viewers. What has COCOPEA members or what have COCOPEA members done, or private colleges and universities done, to adjust to the reality of lower enrollments and financial losses of students and their parents?
Well, a lot of the schools at the height of the pandemic really had to sacrifice not only the schools, but mainly the teachers and faculty. Some even had to accept deferred salaries, just to allow the schools to continue. But really, the resources of many of the private schools have been dried up. And to be honest, many of the schools are really waiting for this time, for this opening of this new school year, so that they can catch up with the enrollment, because the economy has already opened and we're expecting the students to come back. But unfortunately, for some, including probably Colegio de San Lorenzo, did not realize the increase in enrollment. But aside from that, the COCOPEA, of course, we advocate for support to private schools through policy and intervention of the government.
Yeah, because I was just thinking, Joseph, many businesses, particularly those in retail and, commercial establishments, those who failed to adapt the digitalization or digital technology or redesigning their formats really failed. They collapsed. They went out of business. Now, in terms of education, I was just wondering to myself, did these universities take advantage of digitalization, or were they, unfortunately, too slow to adapting online classes and reducing? Because from what I understand, most colleges and universities in the private sector are overhead heavy. Kumbaga, you have buildings, you have air condition, electricity, manpower. So, but there are, do you have members who have managed to shift, correct?
Yeah, I think I believe that education was the first to really adapt to innovation and technology during the pandemic, because it has already started even prior to the pandemic. But I think, Cito, it's really hard to compete with free and near free education in public schools. I think that's really the main reason why many of the private schools are being crowded out in the education system. It's really hard to compete in terms of the choice of parents when the choice is between what is free and what is not. And given the pandemic, because of the economic woes of parents, it has exacerbated. A lot of them were not able to send their children back to private schools. In fact, 400,000 students from the private sector moved to the public school system, according to the Department of Education at the height of the pandemic.
Okay, 400,000 go from private to public. Is it purely a financial reason, or is it because some of these private colleges and universities have deteriorated? Because, when you see the annual rating of universities and colleges, you kind of scratch your head. Parang pababa ng pababa ang standard of education in private sector.
I believe it's really mainly the pandemic. It's really economic, because that number is unprecedented. That mass migration is really unprecedented. It happened during the pandemic.
Okay, but if that happens, what then is the future of private colleges and universities? Because in the United States, they've discovered that 60% of their students, I'm not sure, I'm not definite on the term, but I heard that 60% of the income is primarily from loans, student loans backed by governments and financial institutions. But here in the Philippines, what's the future for private colleges and universities?
I think we can look into expanding existing government subsidy programs for students and even for faculty. So right now, we have the education service contracting and the senior high school vouchers for basic education. We also have the tertiary education subsidy for college students. If we can expand the number of slots and the amounts for these subsidies, we can help a lot of the students to really be empowered in their choice on whether they want a private college, university, or school, or they want to stay in the public schools. This also decongests the public school system. And in that way, it also helps government in managing its resources. So right now we're looking at that. And at the same time, of course, the effect would be it could help the schools to survive through the government subsidies to students because
Okay,
the
but
students would use it.
Attorney, in all honesty, has your organization done a survey or a confession, ika nga, of how many of these establishments are on the red, are in the red, or are at risk of folding up if things continue? Because we are kind of getting used to COVID and we're trying to get out of that economic slump. But there is also global, international, financial problems that are looming. How many of your members would qualify as in the red or under threat, financial threat?
Well, right now we don't have the numbers yet, but we've been in constant. We're doing surveys among our members, but really we won't know until a school is closed down, and it would be the Department of Education and CHED that supposedly would know firsthand if the schools would be closing. But if you ask, the educators are really very positive in their thinking. When you ask them if they're planning to close, what are the options? Of course, the last resort would be closure, and they will do everything to sustain their operations. So they wouldn't say if they plan to close or not.
Yeah, because, knowing some of the people I know in Congress, some of them would say, well, we cannot continue to bail you guys out. We might as well just buy you out. Or if you are a business person, meron kang building, meron kang Colegio de Beltran, pero lugi ka naman, baka mas masaya pa silang benta ko na lang sa gobyerno, here's the building, you run it, you have the resources, because as they say, the Philippine government is the biggest bank in the country.
In a way, Cito, there's some truth to that. In effect, that would operationalize complementarity, but not in the sense of the government taking over the school entirely, but really using vouchers, for example, allowing the students to study in the private schools, use the unutilized classrooms, the free spaces, using government money to send a student to the private school. At the same time, the government saves money in building more classrooms and hiring more teachers. It was reported last week that around 91,000 classrooms are short in the Department of Education. So instead of building, for example, more classrooms, they can increase the vouchers for students because we have free spaces in the private schools.
Yeah,
And
but
we can
wouldn't it
access
be
students there.
simpler to just, okay, bayaran na lang namin yung upa? Because I mean, honestly, as a journalist, there is a problem there. If we continue to give all of these vouchers, we are actually trying to keep business, educational institutions afloat for profit. But government being a non-profit entity, they would then be better off in saying, Joseph, tell your members we'll just rent their facilities and we will run the schools, because it's been done in other areas. Take over, as they say.
Yeah. We're having a very interesting discussion here, Cito. It's,
Yeah.
you raise a very good point, but that's just one area because our education system is composed of two sectors, the public and the private. We cannot adopt one or monolithic system of education where the government controls everything. There's, of course, that element of innovation and uniqueness of private education that it provides. It also provides choices for parents. So that's one thing that we also want to maintain, the complementarity as
Well, that's a given, Attorney Estrada, because I mean, you have very good universities in the private sector like Ateneo, LaSalle, Adamson, etc., National University, PUP. They're all, I mean, I don't know, PUP, I think it's government, if I'm not mistaken. But having said that, so what other options do you guys have? Because I think, first of all, question, don't these member universities and college have a responsibility to inform stakeholders in advance? Because in the case of Colegio de San Lorenzo Bayan, people are saying that, wait a minute, we didn't even know. We were shocked on the first day of classes.
Yeah, I think that's what makes it really intriguing, and a lot of people are upset, maybe because of the timing. Based on the regulation of CHED, and I believe there's a counterpart regulation of the Department of Education, in terms of when it comes to outright closures, the closure shall take effect at the end of the school year, not start. That's what from what I recall. But really, there's no period within which for the school closing down to inform the students, because it's outright. But the regulation says it should be for a cause. So the reason should of course be consistent to the outright closure. So what could be the reason that the effectivity is immediate and not wait for the end of the school year? So
do you have any idea, Attorney Joseph, if kasi yung sabi mo, di ba, if you suddenly, kung biglaan, there must be an immediate urgent cause for that. So biglang dineclare na disaster site yung lugar mo, then that is a cause. But in terms of financials, would you agree? Is there a possibility that they closed because they didn't even have half of the enrollments that they were expecting? Kasensya na, no? Hindi ko rin kabisado yung group na yan. You're more in this industry. How bad was their enrollment this year?
I don't have the facts right now, but yeah, if there will be a probe, that should be looked into. The cost should be consistent with the timing of the closure, because even if you say financial losses or instability, you have at least certain, because what you collect, these are institutional funds. It could at least last you for one school year. That's why you have projections for the year. Like tuition, right? So we should look into the reason why they are closing immediately and not wait for at least the end of the school year at the soonest.
Okay, in your organization, the Coordinating Council of Private Educational Associations of the Philippines, or COCOPEA, what are your rules regarding this? Because one would imagine, a peer review. Ika nga, before you become a member of this group, you must be willing to undertake certain standards and rules. For COCOPEA members, what are your rules regarding financial stability, peer review, and security, etc.?
The members of COCOPEA are the associations, not really the institutions. So we have five national associations, and the five national associations each have their own parameters and qualifications for their members. So basically, we cater to Catholic schools under the CAP, Christian schools under the ACT school, and the bigger universities and colleges under the Philippine Association of Colleges and Universities. Then we also have members for countryside schools under POPSCO, and then tech book schools. And basically, it's not, of course, sustainability, the reputation for quality. Those are the basic parameters, and of course, viability of the schools, and recognition of government, and even accreditation for most of us. So it means that when you have accreditation, when you have recognition of government, basically, you have the viability and sustainability. But I think these really extraordinary times, Colegio de San Lorenzo is a known school, one of the bigger schools in Quezon City. And to think that it could happen to them is really alarming. So we could...
When you say one of the bigger schools in Quezon City, kasi ang nabasa ko sa dyaryo, they have 1,500 students this year. But that's across the board. Meaning they have from lower grade to college level. So if you kind of, okay, how many classes, how many in a class, 30, parang teka, mukhang ang nipis ng enrollment nila this year. Is this representative of the other schools and universities in the private sector? Is it really that bad?
Well, when we look at the numbers now, of course, it's very low, but I'm referring to the numbers pre-pandemic and,
Yes.
before the consistent decline in enrollment in the private schools. Colea San Lorenzo is not really one of the smaller schools. It's a known school in Quezon City. Prior to, I think really 1,000 is a small size enrollment considering also the size of the school and the resources that it has to maintain. So in many schools, Cito, it's 1,000. Yung iba, they could barely complete a class. I was informed, no? By some of the mission schools, talagang halos magsama-sama na lang sila sa isang classroom yung mga different levels. And
wala nang section.
Wala nang section.
I mean, when we grew up, there was I'm sure ikaw section A ka, ako section D. Kasi kami yung basagulero. but nowadays, pinagsasama na lang.
May mga ganun po, no? At the height of the pandemic, really, it really happened. Many of the schools had to cut the grades. They have to close because there's no enrollment. So they have to continue with other grades and temporarily close some. So that's
okay.
reality.
Educators are future-centric, Attorney Estrada. And one would imagine that by this time, these institutions and the people that run them would have already come up with ideas, concepts, or business models that would do away with too much financial bleeding, maximize the quality of education and efficiency. What is being done by COCOPEA association members? Let's go for a quick break. When we return, kindly discuss that with us, please. Okay, we'll be right back here on Agenda. Okay, welcome. Oops, nagfi-feedback. Welcome back to the program. And once again, with us is Attorney Joseph Noel Estrada, the Managing Director of the COCOPEA, or Coordinating Council of Private Educational Associations of the Philippines. Before the break, Attorney Joseph, I was asking you, because mentors, leaders of educational institutions are generally perceived as future-centric. Kumbaga, pinaghahandaan na nila yung darating, hindi pa dumarating. What changes do you see will happen in the landscape given this, what happened to Colegio de San Lorenzo and the continuing difficulty of parents to sustain the education of their children?
Well, number one, we really need to ask government to not only look into policies and regulations on private schools, but also in terms of support, not only directly to the schools, but also to the students and the parents. Because the sustainability of the private schools depend on tuition payments, on the ability of the parents to send their kids to school, and it does not mainly depend on government appropriation like the public school system. So that's one of the main things that we're looking into in the future because of the constant decline in enrollment, because of the impact of the long-term impact of the pandemic. So no matter how we prepare, no matter how we want to raise the standards of our facilities, of our resources, if we do not have the financial wherewithal, then we won't be able to do that.
What about scaling up digitalization, online education, and modular education? Because I don't know, saan ka ba nag-aral, attorney?
UST and UST Law and Letran for college.
Okay, because I went to University of the Philippines, bagamat it took me 7 years to graduate. Anyway, but you know, in UP, the model at the time was, pumasok ka, hindi ka pumasok, most professors were not attendance conscious. They would lay down the module, or they would lay down the subject matter, the scope of the readings, etc., the materials, references, and there would be scheduled exams. The only thing you needed to do was know when the exams were going to be and when there would be in-person, kumbaga no, required, parang, oh, there's a special lecture, you have to be present. Now, I've seen that with my own daughter who's studying in the Netherlands, and they didn't have to go to the university for a long time. Everything was online. What about in among COCOPEA? Because to me, parang mas practical yon. Mas konti yung kailangan mong tao, personnel sa school. You don't need schoolrooms, etc. What's the future for scaling up digitalization?
Yeah, I agree completely with what you said, Cito. In fact, in the past 2 years, 2 school years during the pandemic, the private schools have trained their teachers and faculty, and they have adopted to technology and innovations in their campuses, and we intend to continue with that even when we integrate in-person classes for this coming school year. That's why we have a pending appeal to our Department of Education if we can be allowed to continue with blended online and remote learning platforms after the October 31 deadline. For colleges and universities, we're still allowed to be flexible in our platform. So that's a very good thing, because we will be able to continue with this flexible learning platforms. And as you've said, it can be more efficient, or it can also be more cost efficient, not only efficient in the delivery. So it can answer many of the limitations that we have when we only had full in-person classes in the schools.
Mm-hmm. Okay, now what about the modular system? Kumbaga, okay, here's your packet, aralin mo na yan, kabisaduhin mo na yan, and then come back for the regular exams.
Yeah, in some schools also do that. Not only in the public schools, but in some private schools in the regions, they were able to do that. So the teachers develop the learning materials, the modules, and they send it to the students so they can study it independently and just come back to submit the report. So right now, if it can supplement the in-person classes, that would really help a lot.
Mhm. Okay, now going back to what we were discussing earlier, yung bang paupahan na lang yung eskwelahan doon sa gobyerno. What about joint ventures? I mean, parang ganun na rin naman, di ba? May mga voucher, nagbibigay para sa estudyante. What about a PPP? Okay, bago yan, educational PPP. Hindi ka pa naglo-launch, meron ka ng building, meron ka ng staff. Can you play around with that model, Attorney Estrada?
Yeah, actually, you're right on that. This PPP on education was first brought up during the initial implementation of the senior high school program when the K-12 law was passed. Because at that time, the government sees lack of classrooms to absorb all of the senior high school students coming from the public school. So that idea of a public-private partnership in education was brought up. So it's up to them on what to, how they can partner to put up schools so that the public school students can study in these senior high schools put up by the private sector. So I think a similar model can be explored for this so that we can avoid more school closures. But still maintaining, the challenge there really is still maintaining the identity and character of the private educational institution. But at the same time, the government also has some control and of course giving the enough support for it to sustain its operations.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, you can have a PPP and then it can evolve into a management contract. Kumbaga, it's still your product, it's still your building, but now the government has more say on it because they have more money in it. And it is not simply an arrangement to keep your business afloat and profitable. Kumbaga, it now becomes a sincere joint venture, so to speak. Now, Attorney Estrada, do we have, because alam mo naman, hindi naman ako nang magmamarunong, no? Dahil ignorante ako in many areas. Meron bang parang SEC for education, educational institutions, yung for their financials? Because I know, like, stock exchange, SEC, if you're a private corporation, or you're a company with public shares, etc., you have to submit annual statements. For universities and colleges under COCOPEA, its member associations, do we have a system of monitoring this? Because it will all go back to that. When Congress investigates and Quezon City investigates Colegio de San Lorenzo, parang, okay, bakit walang nakaalam nito?
Yeah, the educational institutions, the corporations operating these private schools are also under the jurisdiction of the Securities and Exchange Commission. And they are required, just like all other corporations, to submit their annual audited financial statements and other records as may be required. And of course, if they're publicly listed, they are they're obligated to publish all of this.
So Colegio de San Lorenzo falls under not just CHED, but also SEC.
Yes, yes.
So, okay, who was supposed to know this financial disaster in advance? Be sure the lawyer, pasensya ka na. Gagawin kitang consultant for free. Was it the responsibility of CHED or is it the responsibility of SEC na teka, paano kayo mag-ooperate in 2022? Wala na kayong pera.
Yeah, it's first of all, it's really the responsibility of the school. So in this case, San Lorenzo, to inform the Commission on Higher Education based on the manual of regulations that it is closing its program or it's closing its educational institution. Hindi muna yung SEC because sometimes even if you close the school, it's just one of the business. You can still maintain the corporation even without operating a business. So the first responsibility really is to inform CHED or DepEd so that CHED and DepEd can facilitate or help facilitate the transfer of students, securing all of the records, also helping out in the transfer of displaced faculty and teachers.
And how how much time does DepEd and CHED require a educational institution to tell them? Kasi ito, first day of school, we are closed. Good news! No more classes. You are all on vacation. How much time is required?
It's silent on that when it comes to outright voluntary closure, depending on the cause. So I think when we say, when it is silent, the notice should be reasonable enough.
Mhm.
And that's why there's the requirement is really the effectivity of the closure should be at the end of the school year.
Okay. No, but attorney, but this isn't the first time this happened. Unfortunately, it has happened in the past. I medyo mahina lang talaga yung memory ko, hindi ko na matandaan. But aside from giving back the tuition fee or refunds, meron bang demanda na nangyayari or what legal liabilities do these like Colegio de San Lorenzo face because of this? Because biglang, hello, I was intending to finish in this college. I'm second year and then suddenly you tell me I don't have an alma mater anymore.
Yeah. Well, generally, yung nagsasarang school naman, they don't naman incur liabilities or they don't encounter naman legal claims. Basta maayos lang yung pagsasara. Remember, like College of the Holy Spirit, parang 3 school terms in advance, they were already announcing. Kasi pwede kang yung closure mo, it can be phased, no? Normally, so for example, you will stop accepting freshmen starting this year. So, yun ang last batch mo, alam na nila, no? So, rare naman na nagkakaroon ng legal challenge. I think, yun lang, if you manage it well, hindi ka naman, you should not be subject to liabilities because you're closing. Hindi mo naman kasalanan yun. But I think, when there's an element of fraud, no? Or there's a negligence, these are the things that opens the school to some legal challenges because the parents would have incurred damages, no, as a result of the closure, katulad nung abrupt closure without the proper notice, etc. Lalo na kung may fraud, no? But in Colegio de San Lorenzo, I really don't know the facts, so I cannot comment on the liability of the owners and administrators.
Okay, well, we can't always blame the universities and colleges naman, ano? Because at the end of the day, as you correctly pointed out, it was the decision of the customer or of the parents whether or not they will send their children or their kid to private school or public school. But is there an existing system where, kumbaga, hulugan installment payments for tuition fee? Kasi parang ang nangyayari, attorney, it's always, nag-open na yung first sem, mag-open na yung second sem, yung third sem, and people don't know because it's a substantial amount.
Right.
We're talking some universities, 100,000, di ba? So anyway, I'd like to know what is the situation out there kasi hindi ko na maalam yung local scenario. We'll just go for a quick break, one last quick break, and when we come back, could you tell me what your members or those associations are doing to ease the burden and attract the customer? We'll be right back here on Agenda. Okay, last 4 minutes with our esteemed guest, Attorney Joseph Noel Estrada of the COCOPEA. Attorney, my question before the break was, meron ba, is there like a, hulugan, paluwagan, or installment scheme other than the one-time beginning of SEM lump sum? Because some parents have said that, that would be a lot easier and less stressful for us. And it would maybe keep the customers or the parents in those universities.
Sito, I've seen many of the schools really adopt creative strategies just to allow parents to send their children to schools. Yung installment, minsan talaga napakababa na, at a very minimal amount you can enroll already. And you pay it in the minimal amount during the school year. But unfortunately, even with that, many of the parents still cannot afford. No? At I think ang isang problema is in many schools, marami na rin ako nakausap na ganito yung sitwasyon, is the abuse. No? Sometimes it's prone to abuse. When sometimes you want to make it light for some of the parents and students. Meron naman yung iba, they have the capacity to pay, they abuse the school, no? So they don't pay, and in some schools nga, they transfer and they leave behind, no? Unpaid accountabilities. Ang kawawa dun yung naiiwan na nag-enroll because they end up chipping in, no, dun sa cost ng operations ng school, kaya tumataas yung cost. So I think that's also one side that should be looked into. But yes, talagang ginagawa na ng mga schools.
What about yung mga educational loans from banks, etc. So parents know. Kasi yung iba, alam mo, pag sinabi mong bangko, ayaw na nila, takot sila, they're intimidated with these ideas. But do bank loans, educational bank loans, are they a good idea?
May mga gumawa na ng ganyan mga schemes. I think hindi siya agad nag-work, lalo na kung the responsibilities on the schools. Kasi ang problem is the recollection, no? Yung repayment. So, kung loan ng parent at sila ibabayad nila yun sa school and it's their loan with the bank, I think there's no problem. But if it's the school who will contract the loan, yun na mahirapan kasi sila yung mahirapan kumolekta and they'll end up paying the loan to the bank, no? Without collecting to the parents.
Okay. Last question, Attorney Estrada. I was just advised by our executive producer, Gab Malyari, that yung mga estudyante and parents of Colegio de San Lorenzo were required or asked to sign a waiver upon receipt of their refund of the tuition. In other words, madaling salita, quit claim ito. Kumbaga, natanggap ko yung aking refund of tuition and I will no longer, sa paano ba ito, babasahin ko na lang kasi baka sabihin iniiba ko yung usapan. Here, I hereby declare that I have received the refund of blank that I have paid to Colegio de San Lorenzo. I thereby forever waive and renounce any and all claims in interest may have had or may ever have against Colegio de San Lorenzo. Ito ba ay legal? Ito ba ay ethical? And will this hold water? Because I know quit claims and waivers, they're a piece of paper, to quote President Duterte.
Yeah. Well, this is a standard. This is a standard whenever you claim for something, and of course the one who will pay you, and you agree that this is a full settlement, of course you have to waive other claims. No? So if, in other words, if you still have other claims, you don't have to sign the waiver. No? At the same time, if you challenge the amount that's being given to you in the form of refund, hindi mo tatanggapin and you don't need to sign a waiver. You can challenge it. You can ask for more. Yun lang naman. But for those who accept the refund as full settlement, then it's a required that you sign naman the waiver. So para tapos na kasi otherwise it will be unending, no, claims. Baka hindi talaga matapos. But you should not be forced. Yun ang mali. No? If you will be forced to sign a waiver, that's wrong. But the waiver itself, it's a standard. It's a contract. If you agree to it, then you can sign. If you don't, then you don't have to sign.
Okay, well, that's it for today. And ladies and gentlemen, please include Attorney Joseph Noel Estrada in your prayers because he heroically participated in our show today in spite of the fact that he is COVID. He is COVID or was infected by COVID. Pero pagaling ka na, so I'm happy that you are already actually on the road to recovery. But thank you for making the sacrifice of being with us and educating our viewers and informing the public regarding these issues on education. Attorney Estrada, thank you very much. God bless you, sir.
God bless po, Sir Cito.
Okay. Yan po si Attorney Joseph Noel Estrada, Managing Director of COCOPEA. I now bring you to our blessing for the week from the book of Isaiah, chapter 65, verse 23 to 24. They shall not labor in vain or bear children for calamity, for they shall be the offspring of the blessed of the Lord, and their descendants with them. Before they call, I will answer. While they are yet speaking, I will hear. I pray that you have a good day today. God bless all of you. Please keep it here on One News PH.